Hi, everyone. This is Amy Major. I'm now doing Spirit Rescues Talk. So we are now going to be conducting a series of interviews for individuals that have the expert um, experience in spirit rescue, paranormal activities. And I, as your host, will be interviewing a lot of people that actually have this experience and they have a lot of stories to tell. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to be able to share those stories with you and give you resources to reach out to individuals in the field of spirit rescue. And today, my first interview is with Joseph Dumas. He has actually been a medium and a shaman for over 30 years in the paranormal and metaphysical communities. So I'm so excited to have him here. Of course, he is one of my close friends, and he is helping me with certain projects I'm doing currently right now. So I had to have him on as my first guest. So I am so happy and so honored to have him here with me today. So Joseph, would you like to say hi, introduce yourself?
Hello, welcome to the world of Amy Major and Spirit Rescue. This is her specialty, and if
Yes.
anyone is interested in the subject, you've come to the right person. Not myself, Amy.
No.
Um, she's, you know, I always tell people who ask about my mediumship that it's a lifelong study, and
Right.
one thing leads to another. It's autodidactic and suggestive. And um, it is the same with spirit rescue. Um, and it requires courage. You've got to have courage to be able to contemplate the idea of possession.
Right.
You know, for those of us who are more familiar as opposed to less with spirit rescue, it is a form of possession. And as I learned through Amy in one of the courses I took with her last year or 2 years ago, that the majority of the population has possession in some form or another.
Mhm.
And I find that amazing. And I think it explains so very much about our day to day maladies and contradictions and roadblocks uh, and chaos that we meet. And it's
Right.
so it can be so subtle that it's ignored or overlooked. But those of us who have stopped to pay attention know better. And I'm grateful to have you in my life because, as you know, I have come to you myself when I have had attachments through the
Mhm.
years, and this has been a great resource for me. And many of the times that we have hung up or exchanged texts and signed off, that I have gone to sleep peacefully.
Well, Joe's, why don't you tell people how you got started in rescue work, what brought you to me, and what brought you to this work?
Well, it was not certainly not by choice. I've been a spirit medium and shaman for 30 years at least, and I still consider myself a student. And really, what led me to you were in actuality, was your book, plus an interview that you did on Coast to Coast AM, I believe with George Noory,
Mhm.
sometime in the last decade. And in consequence of finding your book, I reached out to you. But what led me to have interest in the radio interview and your book was a set of experiences I began to have in year 2017. I moved into a new house, a rental in New York City. And within the third night that I was here, a spirit crawled into bed with me. And as he crawled into the bed, I felt this vibration that shook the bed and shook my body, and I was terrified. And that spirit moved in the way that spirits move up my body from my feet up towards my torso and head, shaking me as it went along. And I was sort of in a suspended animation as this was occurring, and had never experienced anything like this in my years as a medium. So part of me was terrified, part of me was fascinated. And I felt that energy. In fact, I could see in the third eye, the energy open its arms as if to embrace me, and it went right through the bed, and it came up again at the foot of the bed and repeated this same sequence. And that must have occurred 8 or 9 times. I tell you, I was mentally exhausted by the end of the experience. And so I initially reached out to my friend Brenda Knight, who subsequently is going to be a guest on your program, who is a spirit rescue specialist as you are. And she began to try in earnest to communicate with this energy, to understand who it was, what it wanted. And initially, this energy had been, we later discovered the energy had been stuck here in this dwelling for perhaps 40, 50 years or longer. I think it was longer than that. I've forgotten the dates. I've really tried to put it out of my mind. And it seems that the person was killed, not in the house, but in the same place where the house is located. And the room that I'm in, that was my bedroom at the time, was evidently where he was killed and where his energy had sat for decades and sort of coalesced into this very powerful thing. Now, a session with another medium yielded information from that earthbound spirit about the neighborhood. Prior to this house being built, say in the, so I need to correct myself here. It was very likely 100 years ago that the spirit lived here. This house was built during the Great Depression in the 1930s. So there was another dwelling on the same premises previously. And with the aid of another medium, we did a seance, if you will, and she communicated with the spirit, who described the front of the house as it is, and then began to describe how it used to be. And that was just gobsmacked. I was gobsmacked. He did not know what traffic lights were, and at the end of my block, there is a traffic light. And he described it. There's something hanging in the air with lights, and these moving vehicles stop. And evidently, when the spirit lived in this vicinity 100 years ago, there were no porches. The houses went directly to the edge of the sidewalk, and you'd open the door and there would be a short stoop and you're on the sidewalk. And there are other such dwellings in the neighborhood that mirror exactly what he said. So I feel that we made a legitimate connection with him. I still have not established his identity per se, but he was fascinated that when I first moved into the property in May 2017, I did a mediumship session by phone with someone, and he witnessed this, and he thought, oh, there's somebody that can communicate with me. So I recall the next evening, day 2 here, I was sitting in a chair, taking off my sneakers, And in the third eye, I saw him standing behind me, like 7 feet tall. I don't know if he was that size, literally, or if he was trying to impress upon me his large spirit. Over the next 4 months, we lived together. What else to call it?
Mm.
And in ignorance, I tried everything to remove him. I tried religious artifacts, rituals, which only seemed to piss him off. I can recall coming in one day from work and cutting the light on in my bedroom. And there was this, do you know how sand looks in an hourglass?
Yep, I do. Yep.
There was the equivalent of that sand, except it was black. And I saw it sliding off the center of my bed onto the floor and disappearing.
Wow.
So this energy had been here a very long time.
Mm.
And it seems that my energy and my gift had awakened his curiosity, and he had a friend. Now, I perceived his refusal to go away and his continual harassments and entreaties as hostile.
Mm.
What I later learned was he really was lonely and trying to make a friend. Now, that's all well and good to say in retrospect and to think of it in an altruistic manner. But when you're faced with it and you've never experienced this before, you're completely at sea. You know, what do you say? What do you do?
Right.
And I can recall that Brenda, in her initial communication with the spirit, he tried to sicken her. He would send energy toward to her and she would get nauseous. And
Mm.
he was really angry that someone else was intruding between he and I.
Wow. Well, he must have seemed to want to hold on to you very tightly in order to do that.
That's what it seemed. And as you know, I have a spirit guide that's been with me 12 years, deceased soldier,
Mm-hmm.
and he was very jealous of the soldier.
Mm.
So after 4 to 5 months of engagements, I was sitting on my porch, and Brenda and I had a chat with him, and he decided that he had been learning from me, he had been learning from the soldier, and that I could help him, but the soldier could help him more.
Mm.
And he was ready to move on, but did not know how.
Right.
Now, let me digress for a moment, put that on hold, and we'll come back to his moving on. In that particular week in October of 2017, I became aware that he was following me into my office as an attachment. And I can recall there was one day when I felt him in the office vibrating my lower leg.
Mm.
And I did not know what to do, because I'm in a professional office setting, diametrically opposite any of this,
Mm.
content-wise. And I'm sitting at my desk, and there's a massive black desk blotter in front of me. And I'm sitting there, and as his energy is moving, I see coming out of my solar plexus the equivalent of dry ice, wisps of white smoke.
Mhm.
And I became really paranoid then because I didn't know if it was just me that could see it or if somebody in my office could see it. I had never experienced it previously. And I'm sure I've mentioned this to you in conversations. Do you have any insight into that?
Well, that happens whenever a spirit is stimulating your ectoplasma. It's
Okay.
a frequency within the auric field, and when it's trying to stimulate that, it's trying to feed off your energy.
So that evening, I came home and I was sitting on the porch, and Brenda was having a chat with him. And then I think something happened in her life. She had to sign off. She could not stay with us to help with the ritual to move him on. So she told him that she could come back, we could reconvene the following evening, same time, same station,
Mm,
and that she wanted him to promise not to disturb my sleep as he often did
mm,
through vibration, physical vibration. And he promised. And I felt a calmness in his energy, which made me calm.
right.
And I went to bed that night and I'm just about to go off to sleep and I suddenly feel the spirit's energy descend onto the bed. And it felt like warm blankets across my lower leg, like a pallet had, and he didn't vibrate me. He just sat there, I guess. I don't know what else to call it, what do spirits do.
Mhm.
He sat there all night peacefully and I slept peacefully. And I had a good day the next day. And that evening, I reconvened on the porch at say 8 o'clock with a cigar, my favorite habit, bad habit. And I got Brenda on the phone and I felt this energy around my lower legs, around my shins.
Mm,
And we did a prayer ritual and she began to communicate with the spirit vocally to trust and to move on into the light and to follow my soldier into the light. And as she said that and said it more than once, my legs began to vibrate like I've never experienced. I was not in control of it. And it was the spirit lifting off,
mhm.
trying to be trustful and move into the light. And suddenly it was gone.
Such an
And
experience.
Amy, there are no words for it. It is unparalleled.
Mhm.
And that very night when I got into bed, I felt another spirit descend onto the bed, and I'm like, oh no. And I felt the spirit touch my back, and
Mhm.
it was my soldier. I
Oh,
know it was him because his energy has a particular feel, frequency, vibration, and it's very peaceful. And he was coming to reassure me that the spirit was gone.
do you think the experience of the first spirit in your auric field, do you think that maybe may have created an overstimulation so that now maybe you're experiencing a sensation you didn't have before?
Oh, definitely. But I will say that in the years between when the soldier arrived in 2010 and when this new experience began in 2017, 7 years later, having experienced the soldier physically um, in similar ways, sitting on the bed, touching my back, but very peacefully, um, I think that acculturated me to that experience
Mm,
such that I didn't lose my mind or do something rash like move out of my house,
Right.
because so many people said, well, it's the location. It wasn't going on before. And once that spirit was gone, there was peace.
Now, in all of those scenarios of speaking with the spirit, being with different mediums, did anybody find out the reasoning behind his earthbound status? Like what made him hold on
Well,
and move into the light?
one one medium that communicated with him when he described the neighborhood as it is today and as it was previously, he told her that someone had killed him on these premises, not in the current house, but in another dwelling that had set on the same lot. And evidently, where my particular room then was situated was where the dwelling was that he was killed.
Mm,
So he became, it seems, attached to that particular area.
right. Now, I know there's a lot of people that do get murdered in this world, and a great percentage of them do move into the light. Was there any type of anchoring effect through the death experience that may have contributed to the spirit making that decision?
Well, I definitely believe this now. You know, as I feel like I'm preaching to the choir with you, but for people who don't know, when death occurs spontaneously, or with what shall I say, um, in a tragic way, car accident, someone kills them. The shock of that is, I believe, part of the anchoring effect. They don't know that they're deceased
Right.
because there are many documented accounts of spirits recounting their death experience. And one of the consistent stories or threads in those stories is they all say it's like awakening in another room.
Hmm.
So if you awaken in another room and there was no lingering illness and you arrived in that other room rapidly, it seems that the chaos of that would leave one wanting explanations as to how one arrived in that space.
And it's different for all spirits.
Different for all spirits. I have a happy coda, I guess I can call it, to that original spirit story. 1 year to the day, May 2018, of when this haunting began, after he had been with me for 4 months and departed,
Hmm.
I awoke to him sitting on my bed. I didn't see him, but somehow I felt through the third eye, through my chakras, I knew it was the same person's energy.
Mm.
And it was very peaceful. And the message I received was he was coming back to thank me for helping him move on. And that was very peaceful.
That was. I mean, all the years of you being a medium, 30 years is such a long time. Had you never really experienced any earthbound situations prior to that
Not
experience?
consciously, not consciously. And it was this experience with this particular spirit that opened the door
Mm,
for me to learn about it. And which is ultimately how I found you, in going through the coast to coast guest list and content. And I listened to the interview with you and George Nuri, and then I saw the advertisements for both of your books, and I got them. And it was like a light bulb went on because I said, this is my experience. And so many people in the mediumship field that I have known through the decades had not had the experience consciously either.
Right.
I can tell you, I went to a spiritualist church out in New Jersey associated with the, help me out here, there's a college outside London in Essex called the
Arthur Finley.
Arthur Finley College.
Right.
And I believe they are part of the Spiritualist Society of Great Britain.
Correct.
And for those of you that don't know, the Arthur Finley College was established by Arthur Finley, a man who lost his son and discovered that his son's spirit lived on through a medium. In his gratitude, he left his big mansion in his will to the Spiritualist Society of Great Britain. And subsequently, it has taught classes for mediumship and other aspects of the paranormal for 100 years nearly by now.
Hopefully we'll teach rescue one of these days.
Absolutely. Well, presently, that's why I brought this up. They don't believe in it. And the church I went to in northern New Jersey, the Journey Within, with a medium named Reverend Janet No Havoc,
who actually just recently passed.
Who just died.
Very sad.
I attended her church looking for answers, probably in the same year, 2017, 2018. And she basically slammed the door in my face. She said it was all a figment of my imagination, that they don't believe in it. Now, by contrast, I have had a shaman teacher from Africa, Dr. Maladoma Some. I sent you his book, The Healing Wisdom of Africa. And sadly, he passed away back about 9 months ago in December.
And he recently came through to you.
He recently came through and is working with me in spirit. And Maladoma had a context for my experiences going back centuries. So who was I going to believe, him or this lady who was a former nun who basically just brought the Catholic Church into her mediumship? And I feel perfectly confident and justified in speaking of her like this, because that she was so close to the idea of rescue mediumship was a shocker. And what I know as a medium that's been studying for 30 years, there are areas of this study that you will never get to in your lifetime because it's just too broad.
Right.
And
there's too many things to know. There's too many experiences. You can't know them all.
You can't know them all. And what I should say now is what I should have said at the very beginning is, and I'm taking this from Dr. Maladoma Some, my shaman teacher, who I referenced to has just died. He believed that those of us in the physical, that our lives will not function properly until we make peace with our loved ones in the ancestral realm. He believed that there had to be a constant communication between both the physical and the non-physical continually for our life in the physical to flow and our life in the non-physical to flow well. That our ancestors are equally learning from us there as we rely on them here for three things: guidance, nurturance, and protection. And, I can give a number of examples. We don't have the time today from my soldier who has offered me guidance, nurturance, and protection through the years. I'll give one example. Back in 2013, 13, I was asleep. I was supposed to meet a friend for lunch, and she called to cancel because it was snowing. And we were going to go to a play on Broadway. Um, Not my thing, but she wanted to go, and so I said, why not? And as it was snowing and things were closing down, I turned over and went back to sleep. So a few hours later, I felt this jolt 3 times through my body, once, twice, like I don't know what to call it, like an earthquake happening. The third time I sat up because I knew it was something purposeful, whatever it was. And when I sat up, there was white smoke coming under the door. And I opened the door and I couldn't see into the corridor, white smoke. And it appeared to be coming from the kitchen, and I didn't feel heat, just this white smoke. And I made my way to the kitchen and I found the source, the stove. My roommate at the time had begun to reheat food and then went into his bedroom and closed the door and forgot about it, I guess. So my soldier walked through me 3 times to awaken me. Had he not done that, I would have died either of smoke inhalation or a real fire once it had taken root.
Right.
So that was one of the 3 items of guidance, nurturance, and protection. That was both protection and guidance.
Right. Exactly. And going back to your previous statement about, do you trust what people are telling you or do you trust your experience? And I think there are so many different beliefs and structures of belief systems in this world, and everybody's going to believe something different. And I don't take offense to it anymore. I used to, but I don't take offense to it anymore. And I honor everybody's belief. I honor everybody's view and opinion of the spirit world. But I always go back to tell people, trust your experience and trust your gut above all else, even against somebody else's view and experience as well, because we're all experiencing different things. We're all resonating at a different frequency. So we're all going to be very unique in the spiritual experience. So if someone's telling you something in contradiction to what you're experiencing, listen to yourself.
Well, in that moment when I was visiting that particular spiritualist church in northern New Jersey, the Journey Within, and the lady was telling me I was basically crazy. What I remembered immediately was days before, coming out of the shower, sitting on my bed, and the spirit energy pushed the mattress up, and I weigh over 200 pounds, and my legs cleared the floor. It was as if somebody's hands were under the mattress, pushing it up. And I experienced that, and what I feel now in retrospect about Reverend Nohavat, and I wish her love and light in the spirit realm, is she was not very open to growth. And for me, one of the components of doing this work in whatever capacity is being open to experience. And really what I discovered in the way she administers her church and its philosophies, although it follows the precepts of the Spiritualist National Union of Great Britain, and she was one of their reps here, she really was bringing her Catholic, I was a Catholic too, bringing her experiences as a former Catholic nun into her mediumship.
Well, it's hard not to do that if that's your background. It's a conditional response.
Conditional response. And as I've reflected upon her death in the last few days, what I came to was fear I mean, fear from her
Mm,
about the story I was telling.
right,
It was beyond her purview, her experience. So rather than deal with it, just shut me down.
right.
And I even stayed. I think it's relevant to speak about it. I'm not here to trash her in any way. I'm making an observation about an experience related to a public response to
And we've had these
rescue
responses with
mediumship.
many people over many years, and we will continue to have it.
Yeah,
So it's good to explain the experiences we've had to sort of justify some of the things that we do in the future to
yeah.
hold our stance in our beliefs in rescue work.
So I stayed for the service. This exchange with her happened prior to the service, but I stayed for the service. And what the Spiritualist National Union of Great Britain does is they do platform readings,
Mm,
and they have a medium on the stage after the formalized church service to give reading and information. My soldier was the first one that came through
yes,
with extraordinary detail. So when
beautiful.
I raised my hand, the medium on the platform asked, "Can you take this?" And rather than saying it was a friend of mine, I said it was my spirit guide. And
Mm,
out of the back, Reverend No Havoc stood up and yelled, "We don't take readings from spirit guides." So I really was dumbfounded, crestfallen, and I left with sadness.
mm.
So what it taught me and what I've learned through the years, spirit really doesn't want me involved in any sort of organized group.
Mm.
And the pantheon of spirit guides that I work with have been more than adequate to provide information and sustenance that I need to learn and grow.
Well, I will at least advocate the spiritualist church that I go to, the Church of Spiritual Life. They're in Londonderry, New Hampshire right now. I've been a member for almost 20 years now, and they've allowed me to teach rescue mediumship
Oh,
at the
beautiful,
church.
beautiful.
And they are very open. And the National Spiritualist Association in the United States has actually taken my books and put them in the library for people to read about rescue mediumship. So I'm very hopeful,
Yes.
maybe a little too much, but I'm very hopeful of the expansion of the information studies of rescue mediumship in the spiritualist churches. I know we still have a long way to go, but I think it's a stepping stone in the right direction to at least get, if even if people aren't interested in doing this work, which a lot of people aren't,
Yeah.
I think it's important to at least spread the information and have the guidance needed
Mm.
to know what to do if something were to happen and who to turn to if it
Well,
does.
well, I'll say for myself, and you've heard me say it, I am learning about rescue mediumship, but it's not something that I want to pursue personally.
Mm,
Just because um, that because of the first experience I had, and then some subsequent ones that have disturbed my sleep over 5 years, and I truly enjoy the mediumship work I do and the particularity of my style of shamanship that I blend of shamanship that I do. It's very satisfying, and I have good experiences with my sitters who write me and tell me and refer me on, and it's become quite a beautiful thing. But I do believe that I was led to you. I do believe I was meant to have a working knowledge of this information
mm.
and to learn confidence to work with it when I'm personally confronted with it.
So with your mediumship and shaman work, can you explain a little bit about what you mean by the shaman work and what type of services do you provide for people to see if they would be interested in coming and seeking you out?
The greatest thing I do in that regard, beyond the mediumship, is I'm able to give people insights into their story. That's the simplest way to say it. And it's useful information. Sometimes I refer them on to other shamans who are able to assist them in working with that information in ways that can facilitate their growth. But it's almost like I'm a diagnostician in that regard. That's what I would call it. There's additional training that I need to do to be able to be sort of a one-stop shop. And my life circumstances haven't presented that opportunity to get deeper training. You know, I consider my shamanism a syncretism of several cultures, of Native American, African, and some of the indigenous cultures from the Caribbean, Latin America, Africa. And what I'm able to do with people directly is to get to the core of their emotional baggage.
So that sounds like that's something a lot of people need right now.
Yeah, that's one of my skills. My other skill is connecting with their loved ones in the spirit realm. And you know, long ago when I began, if I had a good session, I would worry that I couldn't pull it off again. And of course, I came to understand that was ego.
Mm.
And I learned that all I have to do is show up. I don't have to light candles, burn incense, stand on my head, chant.
It helps, but no.
Yeah, if there's chaos around, it helps. Those agencies can sometimes help slow me
It's
down.
great for a focus of intention, but it's not.
Exactly. I take notes when I'm in a session, you know, as information comes to me, and I often record the sessions for people if they wish. And then and I do, unlike traditional spiritualists, I do try and help them understand the context of the information.
Mm.
And attending that particular spiritualist church that I spoke of, I found the experience lacking,
Right.
because they do nothing to help people understand a framework. You know, why is the spirit giving you this particular information? Is there something you're supposed to do with it? Or are they just saying hello? And, you know, sometimes when a spirit gives information to a sitter, which has occurred post-mortem after they died, it's the spirit's way of letting the sitter know that they are present with them.
Right.
Period in the story.
Well, I think there are many different facilities that
Yeah.
perform certain activities, and they're able to provide certain information pertaining to their beliefs and their comfort style in mediumship. And you're not going to find a lot of facilities that are able to provide above and beyond what you might be looking for. You might need more personal instruction, books, being able to find circle groups, being able to push the envelope, be able to push people past their comfort zone of what they've been doing in the past. I know 25 years ago when I got started, it was not an easy experience to be able
Well,
to talk about my situations. And here we are 25 years later.
and you're a wonderful teacher, and I really do. I'm not just saying this to flatter you, or I want to say to the audience, I really admire Amy's skill, courage, mentorship, and most of all, integrity.
Mm.
It requires integrity. You know, as I always say, when dealing with the spirit world, you can't steal out of the cookie jar. People in the spirit world always know.
Eh,
So, you know, doing this work sort of implies that you keep your side of the street clean.
right.
And all it takes is for you to take a serious interest in this. And that's when you begin to discover there is great order to the universe and there is great order to this randomness people assume to be the paranormal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to close, how can people find you if they're looking for your services?
Well, the easiest way to find me is through the email address dumasmedium@gmail.com. That's DUMASMEDIUM
And I can
Um,
have that listed for you as well on this
I
post.
appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. I am so grateful to have you here as my first guest.
It's been
And
a great pleasure, and the hour has passed so quickly.
it does. It really does. And I think this has been a valuable conversation for so many people to be able to reflect on this and realize they're not alone. For those who are watching and you're seeing, I have the same experiences, I don't know where to go to, reach out. Reach out to a rescue medium, reach out to a shaman, hopefully a medium that is more open to this type of work, and see where it
Somebody,
goes, see where it leads you.
someone's touching my left arm.
Those pesky ghosts,
Those pesky
they were
ghosts.
messing with me earlier. I'm like, not now.
Yeah, yeah, and that's one of the. I'll leave on. We can close on this note. One of the um, effects of the first experience I had with rescue mediumship from 2017, the long anecdote that I gave, I can now sense when a spirit is in proximity to my physical body.
Mm.
I can sense it unquestionably. And it's in vibration, it's in the tone of the energy. What I do know is that my soldier, my family in spirit, my ancestors, they would never do anything to distress my energy.
Right.
So now I know that when I do experience these strange vibrations in proximity to me, it's not a loved one. It's not one of my guides. It's someone from the other realm.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for
It's
being
been a great
here.
pleasure.
And I've had such a great time. And I hope everyone else had a great time. And hopefully, I will see you soon and look forward to the next interview. Have a great day.